Hey, all you flyers, riders, and riders. I hope you had a safe flight in and hit no turbulence. Welcome back to the Tears of Fire podcast, a podcast where I go over The Last Dragon Chronicles by Chris Lacey. And today we're going to be going over chapters 19 through 24 of Book 3, Firestar. Thank you so much, and let's get into the show. We left off at the end of part 1 last time, with David coming back from the north and studying polar bears, and Guilana taking Lucy without any warning or threat or ransom left. So now we're going to get into chapter 19, Gretel Does Her Part. And this kind of jumps right to it. I was just wondering how much of a time jump was there, because the first words is David talking to Liz. We didn't get anything of the travel back, how long it had taken, or anybody was really at. But we pick up with David and Liz talking in the kitchen. Liz is extremely distraught. Obviously, if you lost your kid, you're going to be freaking out, not really thinking straight at all whatsoever. And seems to have been crying for quite a while. So David tries to soothe her. He makes tea, grabs some cookies, sits her down, and they're going back and forth. Liz asks if Bergstrom is upset, but David said that Bergstrom is just as keen to see Lucy returned and safe as he is. He's the one who situated the flights and organized everything to get David back so soon. David asks what she plans on telling everybody since Lucy's gone, and it's going to be quite noticeable. Liz says that she'll tell Bacon that she went to stay with Auntie Gwyneth, which isn't a complete lie, but if Bacon knew who she was, then that's not so good. As they're talking back and forth, Liz just seems confused. She wants to know who set Groin, why they sent him to steal Gadzuk's pen and paper, and why they set Gretel free. Nobody knows these answers, and nobody heard the conversation between Groin and Bergstrom. So there becomes a lull in their conversation and a ring at the door. David goes to check it real quick, and Mr. Bacon comes flying into the house and interrupts the conversation. He's covered in soot from pretty much head to toe and is walking tracks of it all the way through the house in Liz's dark green carpet, which I would be so upset about, man, because it seems like Liz keeps a clean house. Maybe she's got a couple of cleaner dragons to help keep it all together, which would be nice since, she's a single mom, essentially taking care of two kids. As much as they want to say that David is an adult, I think he's supposed to be around 20, maybe 21 or 22. It still seems like he needs somebody to be his mommy. But anyway, all that just to say, I would be pissed if somebody was dragging dirt and soot through my carpet, and I would have to spend time cleaning that up later. But Bacon sits down and is talking to Liz, saying that he thinks that there's either bats or pigeons, some kind of bird, either living in or got stuck in his chimney because he was eating eggs, and all out of nowhere a big old cloud of soot came down. And this makes David a little suspicious. His first instinct is to go check upstairs and make sure that there are no unwanted guests or visitors. He gives Liz a look before heading upstairs, and as he gets up there, Gruffin and Gadzooks are with him. He hears something coming out of the chimney, kind of fluttering. So he sits down and grabs the net that's close to him, almost like a butterfly net is what I'm picturing. Didn't really give too much of a descriptor. But same thing as Mr. Bacon's house, a soot or a cloud of soot falls down and he catches this figure. It was pretty dirty and smoky almost, so they couldn't see exactly what the shape was. And after a second or two of struggling around, they found out that it's Gretel. So, I wasn't sure if we were supposed to put two and two together that this is the same reason that Bacon's chimney was acting up, why Gretel was going back and forth between the two houses. But once David catches Gretel, she's upset. She's trying to punch through the netting with her wings. She's blowing flames in every other direction, just trying to get out. And once David is able to release her from the net, she flies over and she kind of scorns him a little bit and tells him that he needs to be careful. She was trying to get these plants to hear what was going on. She says that plants listen and retain. So she tells David that she needs the listening dragon. David run down David runs downstairs real quick while Bacon and Liz are still talking. Liz asks what's going on. David is acting kind of suspicious, but grabs the listener dragon and says, "Oh, I just need this real quick." Bacon gives him a weird look, and so does Liz, but Liz doesn't pay too much mind to it. She knows that she needs to distract Bacon, so she keeps him in conversation while David runs back up the stairs. As soon as they get in there, it's said that the dragon struggles to get out of David's hands, which is funny. I just picture it like a dog that doesn't want to be picked up. You got to transfer them from the couch to the floor, or maybe picking them up to put them on the bed. And once you do, they're flailing all around, kicking their legs, shaking their body. And that's kind of what I pictured. Like, these dragons must not like David, or maybe they just don't like being handled. So that was a cute little image. I've always pictured these dragons to be more doggish than, like in How to Train Your Dragon, they made Toothless to represent, or maybe not represent, but modeled after a cat very strongly. And I guess the more personality I get from these Liz dragons that they're dogs. They're supposed to be your best friend. They want to be around you. They want to be part of your life 100% of the time. Versus a cat that's kind of slinkish and will come to you on their own terms. So, yeah, I still just, I guess, reading that image and what I saw being portrayed was just them struggling like a newborn puppy trying to get out of the owner's hands. But Gretel is explaining the situation to the listener, and she's relaying the same thing that she told David, that they can hold history and they listen during everything. And so the listener adjusts its glasses, puts its ear next to the pedals, and listens to the story. And it says it's kind of like a TV show with each new revelation. It kind of zooms in on her face and she gets more shocked and more shocked and more shocked, and she just can't believe what she's hearing. And David kind of chimes in at that point and is asking what's going on. And the listener dragon relays it. From what I understood, she relays it to the whole house, which I got confused by in a couple of pages, which we'll get to it. But she relays it, and they all get a serious look about Gretel. They heard the word Firestar, Grockle, and Gwaine. They know that Gulan is planning on trying to bring him back in some way, shape, or form. David heads back downstairs, and when he does, he can see that Liz is just starting to wave Mr. Bacon off, tell him to have a good day, and she's glad that he's back from his cruise. Said that he looks really healthy, so he must have gotten some sunshine and been eating a lot of fruit. Good for him, man. Everybody deserves a nice little vacation. But as soon as he's gone, Liz turns to David and is asking what was the whole thing with the listener dragon. And David just tells her that we probably need another cup of tea and to go get some cookies. Liz tells him that she wants the answers now and she can't really wait. So David catches her up real quick on plant talk, but then takes her down to talk a little bit more about the plan. And that brings us to the end of chapter 19. But that brings up a lot. I mean, that's kind of a big chapter where, we're picking up on part 2. Lucy's gone. We're just starting to deal with the aftermath. I'm not sure how much time passed between then and now. How are things between David and Zanna? Did they make up between this time? Were they still fighting? Did he just leave right after that argument? Because, as soon as they had that interaction between Zanna, David, and Bergstrom in the office and after the bears attack, right after that conversation is when Bergstrom told David that he had a call waiting. So I'm imagining just a couple days after. They don't really give us an exact time frame. But it would be nice to know where everyone's at, especially over in the laboratory. That seems like a lot of work that everybody's going to have to pick back up now that, their study already had so little people in it, and now they're down another member. Whether David was doing a lot of hard work or not, that's still a lot of production that's going to be missing. And that's just tough all around. Tutega gets kind of scared. He's outside about 20 to 30 yards away from the building, getting his dogs and his sled ready. It looks like they're packed up, ready to go on a pretty big mission. And out of nowhere, Zanna comes up talking to him. This scares Tega because the snow's too hard and too crunchy that he would have noticed somebody coming up behind him. She was completely silent. There was no warning of her whatsoever. But Tega gets scared because Zanna is just interrogating him a little bit, asking Tega about the bear's tooth. In the middle of this conversation, though, Bergstrom interrupts when Tega's telling Zanna to pretty much get lost and she needs to go away. Bergstrom tells both Tega and Zanna to get in the helicopter, and it's time to go release the bear. On the drive over to the helicopter, they get in the same old truck that Zanna and David had taken to the town. And Zanna waits a little bit, but once there's been some time and some comfort, she starts talking about David's story and what she believes is true history of the bear cub with Tega. She's telling him about the old story of the hunter Omara, the shaman that she believes that she's related to, and that there was a famine going on. This village that had less people than the amount of teeth a man has in his head. That there was starvation. People were dying. He came home from a hunt and his kid had died of starvation. So he put his kid up in a shrine almost, wrapped up his body in skins, and a couple days later when they came back to see him, the body was picked clean. It was eaten by a bear cub who was also going through famine. It was supposed to be a really bad winter, pretty much no seals. So any carnivore that was in that area is, struggling, having a hard time. The shaman gets upset that his kid's corpse has been defiled and just completely destroyed. He goes to the shaman, and the shaman tells him that he needs to kill the bear cub. At this point, to the Inuit people, bears are very sacred. They're supposed to be the protectors of the earth, and there's no way that anybody should harm them. The hunter gets scared, and he's asking the shaman, how do I do this? How do I kill this bear cub without bringing the spirit of a bear and the vengeance of the bear into my house? So the shaman at this time talks to Amara and tells him to take a bone from the child and strike the bear across the head. When Zanna is telling Tega about this story, once they get to the cub being struck upon the head, she makes the mark that's on her arm, on David's contract, and on the bear's head, the 3 marks of Amara. This freaks Tega out, and he stops the truck. Tega snaps a little bit and asks Zanna what she's after and what she wants to know. Zanna purses her lips a little bit, and she rolls up her sleeve to reveal the same marks that haven't really healed over yet. She's asking him questions, asking him, is this a blessing or a curse? Because I need to know since I'm related to her, the shaman. Zanna says that we don't call her that anymore. We call her by her Western name, Guilana. Which is crazy to think about. I mean, this is the first time we've heard that Guilana has had descendants. I mean, it makes sense. She's old. But this whole time, I would think since Guilana has been so obsessed with the Pennykettle's bloodline and keeping that power going, she would try to keep the power in her own bloodline going as well, keeping those people trained so that they could one day take up the mantle and pursue her dreams as well. A lot of the time, villains or the bad guys in these stories will try to brainwash their offsprings or some kind of mentee to take up the message and the assignment after them. But it seems like Luana has kind of forgotten about her own bloodline and the power that she can pass down. Maybe she's being a narcissist, thinking that she's the only one that's able to control these powers, and if she doesn't train anybody, she can't be challenged. But, when you work alone, that makes you easy to be taken down. So, uh, I think that's a bad move on Guilana. I, I think it's impossible to not know that you have a bloodline, especially as a woman. You're the one giving birth. So if you go through such an experience as pushing a human being out of you, I don't know. I would think you would keep at least an eye on them. Maybe not helping them, but being aware of their existence, knowing where they're at, and yeah, at least their power levels per se. I think this was a massive oversight by Guilana. At this point, Tega tells Zanna that she should pretty much be dead, and he pulls a knife on her and is starting to stick her with it. She laughs rather, I wouldn't want to say maniacally, but it just one step down from that, like almost evil amusement. We're getting kind of a different side of Zanna. I don't know if she's under some kind of trance right now. I don't remember her being touched by the bear, but maybe in all the commotion, he might have nudged her, and so now she's under Guilana's magic that, Guilana was talking about with Ingvar. When they finally get to the helicopter, Russ is talking to Zanna, and she noticed that they pulled one of his teeth. She's asking questions, and Russ says that's the easiest way to tell the age. A polar bear's tooth is kind of like a tree, where every year that they grow, they get a new layer of enamel. So the easiest way to age them is to rip one out, saw through it, count the rings. Which is pretty gnarly. I mean, if you're ripping out teeth of a carnivore's mouth, those are their tools. They need their claws and their teeth in order to uh, handle their nourishment. So I'm not sure what ripping out a tooth really does for the bear. Hopefully, it wasn't an important tooth like a canine. It doesn't really say or specify which one it is. But I mean, obviously, that's also one of the least invasive ways to do it. So it's a toss up. Zanna's telling Tega that he needs to replace the tooth. Tega doesn't want to do it and gets hesitant. But he's also getting scared because Zanna says that she knows his secret and points to a raven that's sitting right on top of a helicopter. She says that if Tega doesn't give it back, she'll call down the fury of the shaman Guilana. And almost timed perfectly, the raven caws, spreads out his wings, and takes off, flies north. Brings us to the end of that chapter, and wow, just wow. For somebody to pull a knife on you, especially someone like Zanna, it doesn't say that she's dressed in her gothic stuff, that whenever she's up here in the north, she's got to be bundled. So it's just a bunch of big puffy coats, probably like snow pants, some heavy boots. Zanna is usually a very nice girl too. So it's interesting to see Tega so upset about this, but he's also not giving Zanna anything to work with. Like, if you just give her the information that she wants, then she'd be able to uh, direct her focus, aggressions, and energy into some better places than Tega. At this point, he's just kind of collateral damage. Chapter 21, What to Do About Lucy. We pick back up in Wayward Crescent, where David and Liz are still talking to each other. David asks Liz what she knows about what's going on in the Firestar. Liz says that she's never heard about it, and she's not going to be much help. She does bring up one thing about Goddeth, and David says, how could he create things? Liz corrects him and says that Goddeth is actually a she. It was a female dragon who created the world/the universe in one long outgoing breath. She also brings up that she's not the one that has the most expertise of knowledge, that Mr. Bacon has been fascinated by cosmology for as long as she's known him, and he might have more information in his study. David says that he'll go check on that tomorrow, but they need to do as much planning and thinking as they can here. He's confused as to why Guilana would take Lucy right now and what Lucy's role could be in the raising of Gawain. Liz explains that though this is a scary event, she's not worried for Lucy's life because Guilana is going to need Lucy alive at some point for whatever her plan is. Liz explains that all descendants of Guinevere are taught by Guilana, and though Lucy has fair hair right now, once a Penny Kettles turns 11, they go through a change, almost like a moth changing, or a moth, almost like a caterpillar changing into a butterfly, where their hair becomes bright red and their eyes become bright green. They all must train under Guilana to hone their capabilities with harnessing the power of the dragons. David brings up his concerns about Lucy being there. Whether Gawain wakes up and recognizes her, or if he's going to be too groggy and start shaking, she could be crushed by boulders, whacked by a wing, eaten because he didn't recognize her scent, anything of the sort. But he also believes that Guilana took Lucy to Ragnar's Tooth. David believes that Guilana is also running a ransom game on them, saying that she'll keep Lucy until she gets the location and exact condition of the fire tier. She won't stop until she ruins mankind or Lucy. David also explains that he knows where the Firestar is. He can't tell anybody as of right now, but wants to make sure that all of that information stays safe. That brings us to the end of that chapter. So, boy, I like this creation theory in this world too because it's, a different take on the Big Bang, how we went from nothing into everything almost instantly from this tiny pinhole atom and just exploded all over and is currently still expanding and expanding and expanding. But that breath was given to by a dragon. There was questions on how I thought, or not I thought, but there were questions on how dragons came to be, if that was the truth. How could a dragon be created when there was nothing first? Liz explains to David that she's just simply started the cycle, and then once she brought everything up, the dragon started coming through as well. Chapter 22, At the Tundra's Edge. The team is flying out. Russ tells Zanna that they gotta go about 50 miles north. They find a nice little clearing. Zanna realizes that this is the tundra and not the ice pack, but Russ is just letting her know, hey, this is more about the helicopter. We can't land this big heavy thing because the ice isn't thick enough yet. Some spots are deceiving. It might look like it, but as soon as they set down, they'll just go crashing through. So they set down on land, and Russ lets them know that there's about a 30-minute time until Ingvar wakes up, and they need to be the heck out of there. So they're setting down the helicopter. They set down the bear nice and soft. It sounds like Russ has really good control because when he's moving and he sets the bear down carefully before they're still 20 feet in the air, when he comes to a stop, the nose barely dips an inch. So this guy's got great control. He's must have been a pilot for quite a while. I'm not sure how windy it gets in Alaska or Canada. They're technically in Canada. But I don't know how windy it gets up there. But to control a helicopter, I have a hard time doing racing games and video games. So props on you, my brother. But as they're releasing the bear, Russ is explaining that they need to put the bear into recovery position, putting his head down into his paw so that the first scent that he smells is himself. Because if he smells a human, he might panic and start his own little tirade. As they're setting the bear up, they hear the phone ring, and Tatuga is too nervous still. He sees the raven had followed him this entire way and landed back on the cage that they had the polar bear in. Which honestly, even without Zanna saying this creepy stuff about the raven, if I saw the same exact bird follow me 50 miles to release this bear, I'd be a little freaked out too. Especially because I know even in real life, ravens and crows are extremely intelligent. There's some, along with magpies, they're some of the smartest birds that can learn how to use tools to get whatever they need done. If you don't know too much about that, I suggest go looking up, just doing some research on it. It's kind of crazy. They'll recognize you. They have longer lives. I think they can live anywhere between 30 to 40 years, depending on how they're taken care of, or just even out in the wild, which is crazy for a thought. I don't know. I didn't. I'm just used to cats and dogs, where cats can live about 20, dogs are about 12 to 15, maybe 20 if you're taking extreme care of it. But so for something that could be held as a pet to me, maybe not an exotic animal, but a wild animal that can live past 40 years is just crazy thought. Guess I might need to touch grass some more. But as they're unwrapping the bear and putting him in position, Zanna tells Tega that he needs to give the tooth back. She's giving this warning and saying that the raven, Guilana, is not going to let the helicopter work unless he gives it back. During this talk between Zanna and Tega, Russ is answering a call on the helicopter. Tega is starting to reach for the tooth in one of his pockets. There's a harsh wind that starts blowing, and three enormous bears come walking up on them. Are they good bears? Are they Guilana's bears? I was not sure what was going on. But then Chris kind of leaves us on a cliffhanger right there and ends the chapter. Chapter 23, David takes stock. David is talking to Liz about their plan, and he says that his writing is the key. I got kind of confused on this and how he knows, because from what I remember, the conversation between Guilana and Lucy when they were talking about David's abilities wasn't overheard by anyone. Liz says when Lucy had disappeared, she had heard Lucy screaming, but once she got there, she didn't even see them disappear. She could just feel it because the ripple leaves a little feeling and leaves you dazed and confused a little bit. Liz also thinks that though David has good skills in writing, he might not be able to write as animatedly without Gadzooks. Liz theorizes that Gadzooks was taken out intentionally to stop them because David needs his spark of inspiration, and Gadzooks isn't able to work properly without his pen and paper since they are a piece of him. He's no longer whole. They're trying to figure out who could be capable of this. They don't think it's Guilana because she doesn't have any other dragons, and they've been pretty on guard. Both Liz and David don't think it could be Zanna. They don't think that she would do anything of this sort or of this nature because, again, overall, Zanna is a good girl. She's got a little bit of a rough exterior, but that's it. David asks Liz why she can't just make a new pencil and pad for Gadzooks. She explains to him that there's a word in German. Let me see if I can find it in the book. Liz smiled sympathetically and shook her head. The German language has a word called Zeitgeist, which roughly translated means the spirit of time. The creation of Zuki and all he stands for was unique to the time you moved into this house. I couldn't possibly recapture the moment. The only way you'll restore him is to find his missing pieces to see this through. So unfortunately, I guess that's just, feeling the universe. Liz explains that there's a bigger thing that pushed her to create him. She pours all of her thoughts, emotions, and being into the dragons as they're creating, but the items that she gives them, she opens herself to a different energy, and that's what kind of guides her. So though Liz says that she knew she was creating a dragon, she didn't know what type of dragon she was creating for David. That came from David and the other energy. David guesses that Bergstrom is behind at least part of this, and I thought that was pretty quick, but they don't really go past that or contact Bergstrom, which would be my first thing. Like, if you're supposed to be on my side and helping, and I think you're behind it, man, I'm going to ask all the questions in the world and try to interrogate them. But David is trying to make plans to go to Ragnar's Tooth and help Lucy, but Liz takes him a step back tells him that he might need to take a nap real quick, think and gather everything together, and explains that their next moves need to be calculated carefully. Says that Graith and the Firestar might be the key to it, that whatever's going on and the information that Graith will learn can help us deal with Gulana. She says, find Graith and fix the situation. Before David agrees to go take a nap, he tells Liz everything that happened in the north. Tells her that he lost Ingvar's tooth, or not Ingvar's tooth, that he loses Ragnar's tooth, that Zanna broke up with him, and that Gulana was in his story. But there's no need to worry because he deleted the story. After he goes to bed, Liz takes a second and grabs the listener, tells the listener dragon to call a special meeting once David goes to Bacon's tomorrow, and she wants all of the special dragons there. She looks at Gretel and Gadzooks, who are still sitting by her side, and says that once David creates a writing, it cannot be destroyed. He's going to have to see this through. Says that they need to protect them by any means necessary, and she takes scissors, cuts a lock of hair off of her head, and hands it to Gretel. The dragons, you can see the dragons are a little hesitant and unsure, but Gretel does repeat, anything? Liz gets serious and looks at her and says, anything. And that's the end of that chapter. And my notes here, are we going to be getting Grockle full fire, full force going? Is Grockle going to choose to be on our side? Gulana was really the only last living person, it really is the last living person to have ever dealt with a dragon in any capacity. So maybe the fact that she has memories, knowledge, and I guess power as close as to the dragon that, can possibly be, maybe Grockle takes her side. It's a little nervous, but, hopefully there's some connection to the penny kettles for this dragon as well. And Lucy, being the youngest survivor of Guinevere's lineage, can, have a huge role to play in this too, but it'd be interesting to see where this all goes. That brings us to chapter 24, Ingvar Wakes. There's a whole lot of commotion going on. The wind is starting to pick up. The raven in the back is starting to caw. Tega gets extremely nervous and just throws the tooth at Zanna. Zanna now seems to be under a strong trance and gives the tooth back to Ingvar. She opens his mouth and puts it under his tongue. As soon as that happens, it says that the tooth takes on a life of its own and embeds itself into its new owner. Ingvar wakes up instantly and is just upset. Russ gets scared and he's trying to go get Zanna because she sees that at first she was kneeling down, and then as soon as the bear wakes up and is thrashing about, she's just laying on the ice. He's scared and hoping that she's just playing dead, which is what you're supposed to do with a polar bear, and he's telling Tega to help him out. Tega's at the back of the helicopter now with his gun, and he's shooting at the bear, not necessarily to harm it or to kill him, because he recognizes that if he does kill the bear, it's going to land pretty much right on Zanna. So he doesn't want to crush the girl. Which is a nice, that shows the kind of character that Tega is. Zanna's been really rude and disrespectful to him this whole time, threatening him as well. But when it comes down to it, in the middle of this chaos and being attacked, he's still willing to put himself out there and do what he needs in order to protect these people. So that's cool to see. He's not, a bad person. He's just got his own superstitions, and Xana's pushing it on him kind of rudely, in my opinion. But I understand it from her point, just because she wants to know what's going on with herself. She got caught up in all of this. That wasn't really her choice, even though she is related to Guilana before David and before Liz and Lucy. She had no clue. She was, how do I say this? Ignorance is bliss. She could have just gone about her life in a normal way, gone to college, gotten a job, had a career, and now she's stuck smack dab in the middle of this magical fantasy novel. So I understand where she's coming off, but I do want to take a second and just say, Tega, that's awesome. Even though you've been being pushed and pushed and pushed, you're still willing to step aside and do what's right. Anyway, Russ is getting nervous because the bear is thrashing about looking at them. He takes off his cowboy hat, tries to distract it, almost like the scene from Jurassic Park, where Dr. Grant is throwing up the flare in the night sky and yelling, "Hey, hey." Same thing with the cowboy hat. He throws it, but the bear doesn't pay any mind. He gets kind of upset. He's like, I paid $60 for that. The least you could do is trample it. And out of nowhere, there's another gust of wind. At that point, the raven comes down and starts attacking Russ too, because Russ starts to get the gun. And with that big burst of wind, there's a smell of 3 other bears coming that Ingvar notices, and he can recognize one of the scents. One of them was the old bear Thorin, but we don't get any mentions of the other 2. Who could they be? Is one going to be the spirit of Ragnar? We do have Ingvar, so it'd be interesting to get an interaction between the 2 generations, but I highly doubt that that's what's going to happen. I would like to know who these other 2 are. If Thorin is supposed to be Bergstrom, is there going to be Laurel, the teller of ways? That would make sense. If you're going to be recording everything that goes on, you need to be part of the story as well. But yeah, so there are those bears. Tega had seen him, and he dropped the gun. He's staring blankly out front of the helicopter, and Russ says that he can smell a strong hint of urine, which, poor Tega, man. He's been so brave, and he must know that there's some kind of prophecy or something going off for him to be this messed up about it. But damn, dude, I feel bad. There's like a mini earthquake going on during this rush of air as well, which to me is, I don't know if it was an earthquake or maybe Gulana was doing something, but after everything clears and cools off, Russ spends about 5 minutes looking for Zanna. He's screaming, looking all around, but what it says is that after a couple minutes, he finds that Zanna and the bears who came to take her were gone. And that's word for word at the end of the page. So it confuses me because I just remember Guilana making the deal that if Ingvar touches Zanna, that Zanna would be in a trance almost and help him steal the tooth. But it didn't say that Zanna had to come with him. It didn't say that there were going to be other bears at all. I think that's more of a Thorin thing, that he could see that Ingvar got crossed up into something uh, against what the bear's beliefs would be, is what I'm going to say, and wants to help the young cub out and show him the way back. But that's kind of where this whole section leaves off. It was a big boy. It was a really fun time. It's kind of scary, which is fitting now that we're getting closer and closer to Halloween. So, tell me what you guys think. Is Zanna going to be on Guilana's side? Is she going to be with the bears? Are the bears there to help Liz, or are they just kind of there to protect their own? And, whoever's on the side is just collateral damage. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. If you guys could go on a trip to somewhere north, where would it be? Would you guys go to Greenland? Would you guys go to the North Pole? Would you guys go to Switzerland? Just tell me what place that's really, really cold and icy would you want to see. The email is gadzooks@gmail.com. Thank you guys for being here. Have a safe flight out and hit no turbulence. I'll see you next week.